Electrocast.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host, Iris, and I'm here with my older brother,
Wesley.
Today, we're talking a movie from 1962. Wes, didn't you mention this in a previous discussion at Or Whatever Movies? The Trial?
I did. I believe it was I'm Still Here. And referencing that movie, I said, do you remember Kafka's The Trial? Because that was a movie in which nothing happened. Joseph K. doesn't understand why he's on trial. And we don't understand why Joseph K. is on trial.
Right. So occasionally here at Or Whatever Movies, we take movie friend requests. This is an official request of listener Mark Swaim, who loves classic films and sent us a potent email requesting Orson Welles' The Trial.
And as such, I will be navigating this entire discussion using my Orson Welles voice. The finest orator in movie history, or at least one of the earlier greats, the whitest and firstest.
Right up there in the pantheon with Morgan Freeman and Richard Dreyfuss. In researching The Trial, I noticed there's not another podcast movie review discussion dedicated to The Trial. So what a public service we're doing to the cinematic community.
Light radiates from the trial. Everyone strives to attain the trial. We shall do it today. I'm thankful that my little sister Iris will explain to us the entirety of the trial, its proceedings, its motivations, its psychological and philosophical impact.
I'm busted, dude. I am not in the right state of mind to discuss The Trial. I watched The Trial over the course of 2 nights. Both nights, horrible anxiety stress dreams. Just like the same thought repeating over and over and over again in my mind. Last night, same thing. And around 1:30 or so, I finally start to relax and I finally start to fall asleep. And then what happens at 1:30?
Fire alarm? Bun puking.
Bun puking in the trash can next to my bed. And then she puked every hour on the hour from there on out.
Why'd you let her watch The Trial?
I think not rated, this movie. Not a family movie, not a kids movie. Lots of sexual innuendo, lots of implied sex.
The lingering shot of a butt, a graphic butt, is not innuendo.
Lingering shot of graphic butt?
Yeah,
Where?
There was a butt in the book, in the law book. This book is heavy. It is like a law book. I will open it. Oh, there's a butt.
Oh, it was like was that another pornography reference?
Yeah. It's ironic, I think, that it would be in the courtroom when, in fact, he has no subversive literature or pornography in his apartment.
Well, yeah, the pornograph.
To play dirty records?
He lived next to the lady of the night dancer server.
Was that Grubach or Burstner?
I think Burstner. I think Grubach was the landlady.
Yeah, she was the one who was like, oh, you're under arrest? How fascinating. Eat your eggs before I break your legs. The office men and the goons came out of Burstner's room, the connecting room from the door that's never open.
to suggest that Berstner, the landlady, let them in. I mean, there's no logic to this.
No, Grubach is the landlady. I've never taken more copious notes for any movie than I have The Trial, and I'm not sure any of them will come to bear. I was like, it is noteworthy that there is a Van Gogh print on the wall. What does it mean? That note was quickly eclipsed by every other thing that I wrote down with a question mark to signify what does it mean. And then I categorized it by sort of abstract questions, larger thematic questions. And then it came down to, well, how do we remember Mr. Holland's opus? We talked about his succession of protégés or the students that he directly influenced. Then it just came down to the women who wished to make love to him.
Yeah, dude. Women throwing themselves at Anthony Perkins' feet.
Yeah, Anthony Perkins, you mean the father of Osgood Perkins, director of The Monkey and Longlegs?
Ding, 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 ding. So that's my first mark on the trial bingo card. Because Longlegs, which you will be unwittingly filling out throughout the course of this discussion, no doubt. Anthony Perkins, isn't he rumored to have been gay?
Orson Welles claimed to have known this and to have used that as part of his paranoia and discomfort, possibly, by throwing women at him left and right.
So just jumping right into the broader themes, impotence comes to mind.
And yet, for someone who is impotent, he certainly made love to several women.
That's what was implied.
But, I mean, they didn't even have to be coming on to him because Berstner passed out and he kissed drunk and passed out birthday girl. And that was the first of Kelly Ray's heavy sighs next to me on the couch.
I was wondering that about Berstner or Burston or whatever. She appears to be sleeping on his leg, a la Dead Poets Society. When homie, what's his name, Cameron?
No, that was Knox.
When Knox takes advantage of the love of his life by kissing her while she's passed out at a party.
Yeah, Chris. There was, however, no Chet to rap Tony Perkins on the beak. But he got the rap another way.
But the moment he kisses her, she immediately reaches up and grabs his neck. So I don't think she's unconscious.
She was swooning, probably.
Mm-hmm. What other rap does he get?
The charges levied against him, as obscure as they are.
Wow.
Man. And then the goons Berstnered out of Berstner's door, and suddenly he was under arrest. But not really, because he's awfully mobile for a gentleman under arrest. He's wandering about the town. He's at the opera. Doesn't arrest mean to bring someone to rest, to restrict their movement?
Arrest in the universe of the trial is a mental state, Wes.
Oh, I see. Philosophically also.
Mm-hmm.
In the way that this movie wants to be arresting.
In a way that you move the trunk across the barren landscape and then back again. In the way that you flit from woman to woman and bed to bed with no real connection. In the way that you roam the halls of the law and never quite come to its end.
And as we drag this trunk through the landscape, the only way we can connect this to our lives, to make associations, to make deductions, is to compare it to all the other movies in our lives and those which we've covered in our podcast.
Over 300 which are available at orwhatevermovies.com or wherever you get podcasts?
Nearly 400.
Wow. Go us.
And they stand there in the past as testaments to our devotion and love for movies, each numbered like the naked zombies, the naked zombie underwear prisoners standing in the town square. He spoke to none of them.
In that particular scene, weren't they all old?
Yeah, those were the old accused, the elder accused put out to pasture.
They were the warnings, the harbingers of what's to come?
Yeah, except I don't know that we were ever delivered that thing which was to come.
For the Joseph K. character?
Oh, no, he was lucky by comparison. You know, you don't even feel it. You don't even know it when you get blowed up. He certainly, you have the fear knowing that it's coming, given that that was one of the slower burning wicks of any bundle of dynamite I've ever seen. But he wasn't bothered by that. He was laughing hysterically. And then his mind is intact and probably racing. And then he's red mist and he has nothing whatsoever to worry about. He doesn't have to stand in the square for all times with a number.
And a diaper. But didn't Joseph K. grab the bundle of dynamite and throw it out?
No, he threw like a dirt clod or something.
I don't know. I think there's a possibility that Joseph K. is still roaming the purgatory of the trial.
No, I don't understand how you could think that. The pit blew up. His laughing cut ceased immediately the second the dynamite detonated.
Why would he choose that point to lay down and die? He's a fighter. He's taking on not the inspector, but Orson Welles' auditor, examiner, advocate.
But Kelly remembered the pit, and he is, in fact, stabbed to death with that knife that they passed back and forth, each one unable to commit. That didn't stop her from occasionally remarking like, how much time is left? Can't they just shoot him now?
Wait, nobody stabbed him with that knife.
No, I'm talking about M. Kafka's trial. This is to legitimize our ability to creatively, to constructively deconstruct the trial in movie form because we had actually read the book.
Why was it like a paring knife?
You know, what it made me think of is Kelly's parents have regular kitchen knives. Maybe they're steak knives, but they've had them for decades. And her dad is particularly fond of one knife. Maybe there are a couple of them that they've sharpened literally over decades to where it looks like a fish boning knife, but it's still a perfectly serviceable knife. Every time you hone the edge of a knife, you're removing metal, and eventually it wears down over years. That was simply a well-used and well-loved murder knife.
Or it could have been symbolic in that it was a bird's beak or a peeling or a paring knife.
But consider, why didn't he pick up the dynamite, which would have been much clearer? Why did he allow them to lay him down? Why did he mock them for their inability to finish him off? You can't do it. And he's like teasing them. And so if we're going to take anything real, philosophical from this movie that gave it a little bit of weight and wasn't just flighty nothing, because to be perfectly honest, I remembered very little about the book. There was nothing to connect it to. We were wandering like he was wandering. The trunk was empty that I was dragging, but whatever. He came to embrace and even identify with these charges, these unknown charges. He was telling everyone, I'm the accused, it's me. And at one point he was trying to convince someone that maybe it was his uncle, maybe it was the landlady. That was very early stages. But he had embraced that role and was in a strange way defending it. So he came to embrace his fate, and really the only way out of this David Mamet, David Fincher, the game style puzzle was to die. I think he welcomed it.
It just renders everything else futile. Like, what's the point of all of his striving and searching and advocating for himself if he is simply going to be resigned to being the accused?
Remember The Wolf of Snow Hollow?
Of course I remember it, yeah.
Where I was the accused, and I was haunted and hunted by everyone who said I was wrong about that movie. I bore the weight of my perceived failing, forever for that movie. The new Wolf of Snow Hollow is I'm Still Here, where I simply will not be left alone about how wrong I was about that movie. About how I felt that movie was empty, was meaningless stumbling through life only to be resigned to nothing happening, and the fate that the husband is dead and no catharsis, no release. And we were expected to care and to feel at every turn for Fernando Torres' character. Were you really feeling it for Tony as he stumbled around from place to place when he was yelled at for being 1 hour and 5 minutes late to the court proceedings, despite the fact that he showed up exactly on time, that he was never in the clear? How am I supposed to ascribe importance that don't impact me in a meaningful way? Spoiler, 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 spoiler.
I wouldn't say that sympathy was the prevailing emotion, but I was empathetically frustrated for Joseph K. I felt the frustration, the futility, just kind of the maddening logiclessness of the situation. And also, I guess if there was anything that I had sympathy for him about, it was what I perceived to be the slow realization of not only the futility of his situation, but the futility of his life. Like, for some reason, him being accused forced him to see this kind of really strange and personal life that he was living to begin with.
This episode is brought to you by Heyday. Feeling stressed? Take a moment for yourself with Heyday. Stroll through rows of golden wheat, tend to cute barnyard animals, and discover the joys of a digital farm retreat. You don't have to hop in a car or catch a plane. Escape to the farm at the tap of a finger. With Heyday, you're not just tending to a farm, you're tending to yourself. Heyday. Search Heyday, that's Hay space DAY, in your favorite app store. Heyday is a free-to-play mobile game and offers optional in-app purchases and random rewards.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
This kind of vacuous life of being, what was he, assistant manager at the nameless firm?
No, he was a stenographer or a big top circus ringleader. What was he accused of being?
What do you mean? What was he? Isn't that the whole point, that we don't know what he's accused
of?
No,
the guy sat him down and said, "Isn't it true that you are a blah, blah, blah?" And he was like, "No, I'm not that." As if to qualify his otherwise nameless, faceless position in the office building with thousands of droning typists who are jazzed about their coffee break and who know it instinctively, even though no bell rings. Time to have that smoke and that cup of joe.
And also, when he's leaving the church, I think he's mumbling to himself about how important he is, how he's got to get back to work, how he's an assistant manager now, and there's some importance there. It was like he was oscillating between, like, recognizing the nameless facelessness of his existence and then also holding desperately on to some importance.
The futility of existence in general is, I think, what this movie and the book was striving for. This idea that he is but a cog in a huge machine. Does he have an impact? I'm not sure. Who is realizing that, hey, Tony is a standout among these thousands of typists, some of whom weren't typing or whatever they were doing. And then he has these charges levied against him that he doesn't understand, that we don't understand. And it's just like a bug crushed under the wheel. I don't know that it does mean anything, or it means everything. We are everything, we are nothing, in a Carl Sagan sort of sense. We are tiny and insignificant and yet precious, maybe. I don't know.
Why do you have to be so negative?
I think it's my thing. It's the futility and the hopelessness and, frankly, the confusion of my journey in life as not being important or noteworthy. Maybe you just have to let go and let God. Guard. Let guard, as in the beginning. I was like, is he saying guard or God? And I think Orson Welles was saying both. And Orson Welles is probably a crazy person and made this Crazy Bongo Gonzo movie, which he said was his favorite movie. It was later replaced. But just, you got, as Shia says, just do it and put it out there, even if it's abstract and obtuse and just
abstruse.
Yeah, and let people think what they will of it.
Ding, ding, ding.
Did you ever see that it's like a meme and someone in all seriousness says, "Have you ever tried pine cone jam?" It's like, what? And people are making jam with little baby soft budding pine cones. And then, so of course, the internet got a hold of that, and it would go from, "Have you ever tried pine cone jam?" And then it cuts to a dude being like, "Have you ever had barbecued hammers?" And he's like throwing hammers covered in barbecue sauce in a pan. And that's what this movie made me think of. I was like, why? Oh, nobody but Orson Welles is adding pine cones to jam. Or Kafka, I guess, who I'm sure is typing furiously in German in his Austrian Czech apartment and not really caring what anyone thinks, but is the result for everybody. And Yeah, the person who was actually eating, I was like, is this real or was it a joke? And the lady was actually eating pine cone jam, and it makes crunchy, squeaky sounds. And she was like, you have to really use something strong and sweet like honey to offset the bitter piney taste. And I was like, why? You shouldn't have to fight against the bitter piney taste forever. But Kafka and Orson Welles are doing their thing as some of the finest outputters of abstract cinema and novels ever. You know what I figured this was? This is David Lynch directing The Truman Show.
You seem to have a lot to say about the trial.
I think the only reason I got Kelly Ray on board is because we typically watch the movies based on books that we've read to see how they, I find that the adaptation is fascinating. And we didn't even know that this one existed.
And yet by such prominent filmmakers. I mean, Orson Welles at the height of his career, post Citizen Kane, Anthony Perkins, post Psycho, doing Kafka, kind of a big deal. And yet also one of those movies, like this is one of the exact kind of movies that we would have watched in my producing symposium with Larry Terman in grad school, where we literally just watched movies that Larry Terman in his 80 plus years of filmmaking just hadn't yet gotten around to watching.
We're learning together.
So we would sit in this little dark auditorium, like 25 Starkies and Larry Terman, and watch some obscure, abstruse, potent film and then discuss it. And that was our class. This is exactly one of those kinds of films, literally almost lost the trial, like produced independently, somehow recaptured, rediscovered, and restored so that we can continue to watch it today. A movie that you can't watch out of its context.
Well, what is its context is the problem. The entirety of this movie, I was working hard, like in this discussion, to attribute significance to this or that thing. It was touted as a thought-provoking movie, and it definitely made me think because I drifted away and I would get distracted and I would start daydreaming. So my thoughts definitely drift, but it generated thought, I guess. But I was trying to figure out, was this a series? Was it more like David Lynch directing an episode of Judge Judy? Like there were a series of seemingly disconnected, unrelated mysteries that I was trying to find out, is this important? He is one of the biggest and brightest stars of his company that's doing well, but was his boss right? Was Ermi the cousin? She was like Tracy in Beat Street. She needed to talk to him, and she was awfully adamant enough to come to his work and pound on the glass. And then when he saw her outside and she was in fact his cousin, he was like, "What's up?" And she's like, "Nothing. What's going on with you?" Didn't actually say the thing that she went there all fired up to say.
And then she falls in love with the brother. And then when she sees the younger brother, who she really needed to talk to, she has nothing to say.
Yeah. Did this movie have anything to say? I wasn't sure. So do you know that Orson Welles directed Anthony Perkins to be secretive, to be furtive? He's turning his back. He's trying to justify the stuff to the goons that suddenly burst into his room at 6 o'clock in the morning. And Anthony Perkins spoke up and was like, "Hey, are you trying to play it like he's guilty or whatever because of whatever the charges are?" Apparently there are a number of adaptations of the trial in stage form or on screen or whatever, and most of them, if not all of them, preceding this, because it's 40 years between the novelization and the motion picture, this Orson Welles one, Joseph K. is typically portrayed as confused and innocent, and Anthony Perkins said, "Are you trying to make him guilty?" And Orson Welles said, "Absolutely, he's hella guilty." Like this is the position. It seems like Orson Welles had a very strong position and it really influenced the performance. And then of course he did all kinds of things like changing the ending, changing the stabbing to an explosion, and filling his life and his mouth with women on a continual basis. And all of that stuff seems telling so is it Orson Welles doing whatever he damn well pleases because no one is watching? Or is it because there is actual significance to the changes and he's putting his artistic stamp on them?
He's doing what he damn well pleases because he's Orson Welles and because there's no other exacting standard by which he abides other than his own. And I'm not the first to say that this is Orson Welles railing against the Hollywood system that punished him for making the best film ever made, like that punished him for making Citizen Kane.
Sure.
And so that's the context, I think, that, or the lens through which I watch the trial. But also, what's my stance on crazy?
Stay away from the crazy. That's my stance.
Ain't nobody got time for the crazy.
You had time.
And there's no
2 hours devoted 2 nights and a lot of your sleeping, dreaming time to this movie.
Ain't nobody got extra time for crazy because there isn't logic there. Just like there isn't logic to a dream. And yet there's all this Inception level detail, but also Inception level control of the situation. And maybe like the narcissism that comes with the, that is the flip side of feeling frustrated or impotent. Why do all of the projections or whatever look at you in the Inception universe?
Because they know you're changing things. You're destabilizing their fragile environment. They exist on a single plane within the mind of a dreamer, and that gets more convoluted the lower you go. The more architects change things, the more they attract attention, and they will try to destroy that thing like white blood cells attacking a parasite or a disease.
Yeah, and how much of that was orchestrated by Joseph K's subconscious? I mean, dreams are really like the ultimate narcissistic fantasies. Like they're all about us, and this is all about him, even if the attention is negative. There was an Inception-esque, Nolan-esque vibe going on in Kafka's Orson Welles' The Trial.
Interesting that I never even considered Christopher Nolan. It was just too weird. Remember Block, the client that was trapped in that little room?
Yeah, the groveling, hand-kissing.
I wanted the Block and Advocate and Joseph K. and Lenny, who has an accused fetish. I wanted that whole exchange to be the 5-minute trailer for this film, where we're just dropped in the middle and we have no idea what's happening. Why Advocate Albert summons him and then yells at Block after summoning him. And Lenny is biting Kay on the arm that she's like thrashing. And then she goes and makes love to the Advocate. It should be the trailer. It should be the litmus for this thing. And you're watching it and you're like, what the hell was that? And then Orson Welles could say, now you are ready for the movie, having primed you thusly.
We joke and we kid and we're serious also about our collective frustrations about the trial, but you can't say that this is a film that lovers of cinema, that people like us shouldn't see.
Oh, I'm sure that people love this movie. Probably Nicolas Cage. It's probably up there with The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari for him, or Orson Welles, like Strangers on a Train. That's Hitchcock. Never mind. Hitchcock was also Psycho, not Orson Welles, even though Anthony Perkins was in Psycho and is now in Orson Welles' The Trial. But there's better. We're standing on the shoulders of those giants. There's better, more engaging fare, dare I say thought-provoking fare, maybe even entertaining movies in the entertainment field. The Trial is not clawing its way up the IMDb top 250.
Pretty awesome sets, though. The shadows, the sets, the chaos, the infinite set deck.
Set deck? Nobody says set deck.
It was kind of incredible.
Are we moving towards something? Because all these set pieces are spectacular. Actually, we recognize some of the locations, the Zagreb Cathedral, and we were like, wait, we were there. And it was filmed around Croatia, where we visited, and that was sort of jarring because what's supposed to look, glorious and like sets and very expansive and sort of, I don't think that any of those settings were supposed to look familiar. Right? They were very like brutalist, utilitarian sort of block structures and nameless, faceless offices and stuff. Was this moving us towards something finite, or was it just a pit? Like, was the pinnacle of this movie, was the third act final showdown with Titorelli in the Valley of the Dolls upstairs in the lighthouse? I'm trying to figure out what we were moving towards unless it was nothing, just trudging out of conformity towards an ignominious fate.
It's kind of Kafkaesque. I don't think it's intended to be like a hopeful message or instructive in any way.
I don't know what any of it meant, and I'm not sure that I can do this movie justice, even though you and I are maybe the most well-positioned. We discuss movies. We're literature majors. We read Kafka's The Trial. I don't know what you're coming to us for, Jake, or whatever your name was, but...
Mark?
Yeah. Why is Mark, who is jazzed about The Trial, listening to Or Whatever Movies?
Because we're the bomb.
We're the bomb.
And we have nearly 400 episodes at orwhatevermovies.com or wherever you get podcasts.
Man. As an abstruse exercise in potency, I'm going to give this movie the rating of ovular. Because where do we go from The Trial?
And that's our discussion on The Trial, a movie from 1962 available on Tubi, newly restored. This was a request of an Or Whatever Movies listener. Thank you, Mark, for making this request.
Thanks, Mark.
And edifying us as the movie reviewers and discussers that you love here at Or Whatever Movies. 818-835-0473 if you have additional requests for us, Patreon, and then orwhatevermovies@gmail.com. And check out our other discussions, including Psycho, Inception, and Longlegs, all referenced in this discussion on The Trial. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Why is it that games make us feel so good or completely rage quit? These emotions we feel are mostly not an accident. People like me designed them. I'm Chris Cross, and this is Brain Arcade, a podcast all about the psychology of game design and why games hit us so hard. Each week, I bring on a new guest, designers, psychologists, storytellers, to break it all down with me. If you play, design, or just love games, follow now.
Electricast. Electricast.